boom 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 boom. Ba 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 ba. The name's Newz. Danz Newz. Alright, hey guys, welcome to the beginning of Bond month. This is the very first day of 22 days straight of me watching 22 Bond movies in a row. Today we are starting with Dr. No, the very first James Bond film by Eon Productions. I know there was the original Casino Royale, but that was more of a parody than... Let's not get into technicalities. That's not part of the series that I'm watching. So, the first Eon Productions Bond movie, Dr. No, starring Sean Connery as James Bond. Sorry about the impression. It's terrible, I know. Goldfinger? No, that's later. So I've got here this 50th anniversary edition of the Bond series on Blu-ray. It has all 22 films up to this point, starting at 1962 to 2012, all of the movies. It even has a slot for Skyfall in there, which I thought was really awesome, and I actually touched on in my update video. But today we are going to be starting off page 1, 1962. Dr. No. So, right off the bat, I haven't seen this movie in a while. I remember the intro's kind of... I mean, this is the intro, like, that establishes the intro for, like, all of the Bond movies, where they kind of have a big credit sequence with kind of crazy colors and women. I don't know if there are women in this, but I remember it was set to 3 blind mice. I'm pretty sure the entire thing is set to 3 blind mice. 3 blind mice in a row. But yeah, there's not much I remember about this. I remember, of course, Ursula Andress coming out of the water, that famous image, and, you know, not a whole lot. I don't remember a whole lot. So, it'll be interesting going back. This used to be one of my favorite Bond movies, yeah, there's not much I can remember about it. So, hopefully, I really like it by the end of it, and I'm kind of excited to see the rest of them after it. So, yep, let's get to it. Next thing you'll see is my reaction after the movie, in between a little bit of trivia on the movie. So, wah! Dr. No. Alright, so that was Dr. No Down. Hopefully you learned a little bit from that trivia. I just actually read through it all. Pretty interesting stuff. But, okay, so, Dr. No. First off, I was wrong about the title sequence. There's actually 3 songs that play throughout the title sequence. One is the traditional James Bond theme, and then I think, I can't remember the second song, but the third song was the 3 blind mice, because it transitions into the 3 blind guys. Yeah, that intro is like seizure-inducing. It's like, whoa! I don't know what the deal is with that, but yeah, it's definitely iconic, but it gets kind of sloppy, I think. But then again, it's hard to fault anything in this movie, because 1, it was made in the early 60s, and 2, it was apparently made on a budget of just around a million pounds. And apparently the studio wasn't, like, according to the trivia, the studio wasn't that thrilled with the cut that they were shown, and Ian Fleming apparently thought it was... Ian Fleming is the creator of James Bond. Apparently he thought it was dreadful. Like, this movie had a lot to prove, but I think it's still a good movie. I thought it was still pretty good. It was funny. The shot, as you saw in the trivia before, the opening shot of the movie isn't Sean Connery, the famous gun barrel sequence. It was the stuntman, and it was quite obvious. Watching, you know, because I'm watching the Blu-ray restoration. Here, I have my notes right here. It was quite obvious that that was not Sean Connery. I've never noticed that before, watching Dr. No, that wasn't Sean Connery. That was pretty crazy. So, yeah, apparently that shot was achieved by actually getting a pinhole camera through an actual, like, gun barrel, which is what it's supposed to kind of recreate, is kind of Bond being pointed at by a gun and then him killing the guy who's shooting him first. But yeah, the title sequence was really... I remembered it being a lot smoother, but it's pretty rough. But yeah, it's still definitely iconic Bond stuff. You can see the early ideas they had there in the intro. I'm sorry I'm going on so long about the credit sequence, but I love kind of credit sequences and stuff. And as long as they keep you interested, I'm fine with them going through the entire list of credits, essentially. But you have to have an interesting enough credit sequence in order to do that, and usually the Bond movies can pull that off. Sean Connery as James Bond, he is just one smooth bastard. That guy is the suavest. He is the coolest guy ever. From the very first shot, they just say Bond, James Bond. That was the first time we see him. That scene is just awesome. I guess I have like a man crush on Bond. I don't know what the deal is, but the second he pops up, it's just like, holy shit, that guy is awesome. But it's kind of crazy the things he does throughout the movie, because there's a scene where he essentially takes advantage of a bad girl, somebody who is meaning to kill him, but fails, and then he shows up when he was supposed to be dead. So he actually shows up when she told him to, and she's surprised, and she gets on the phone with the guys who are trying to kill him, and they pretty much tell her to stall him for a couple hours. And he knows that's what she's doing, but he takes advantage of it anyway and sleeps with her, and then essentially arrests her. Like, okay, that's iffy. Like, I understand she's a bad person, but like, I doubt that's standard practice at MI7. By the way, they said MI7, not MI6. Apparently, they originally the actor, like in the script, it was MI6, but they dubbed it MI7 because I don't quite understand what they were kind of worried about. They just didn't want to embarrass the real organization, I guess. But that was kind of weird. And speaking of dubbing, this is an older film. And this happened more and more in older films, but dubbing, so many lines are dubbed in this film. Some are weirdly dubbed, there's weird cuts. In the actual movie itself, there are weird cuts. Again, I can't really fault it too much because it's an older film, and film editing back in the day I couldn't imagine was too easy to do. But yeah, the cuts, there were some wonky cuts. There were some, mainly towards the beginning. Actually, towards the end it wasn't too bad. But yeah, there were some wonky cuts where they would be focused on an actor, and then we obviously cut to a different take, to where it's the same angle and everything, just the actor slightly moves, and that's, you know, whatever. But yeah, the sound, there's weird sound cuts. And what's hilarious to me in older films when I see them do this is the nighttime scenes where they film it during the day but darken everything to make it look like nighttime. And it obviously does not look like nighttime. It's obvious that there are shadows being casted by the sun. A lot of the stuff they filmed was on water, so you could see they're like sparkling on the water. You know, the moon does do that, but not to the effect that they do when they film it during the day and, you know, make it dark. Overall, I think the restoration was pretty amazing for the Blu-ray. It was really crisp enough to know that it wasn't Sean Connery at the beginning. But yeah, it was really crisp. There weren't really any issues that I had with it. It's kind of hard to really kind of rate how you know, at this point, what a 50-year-old movie looks. It looks good. It looks pretty damn good, crisp, for what they could do with it. Definitely better than the VHS version that I used to have and watch. There was a plus about the movie was usually Bond is kind of known for the whole globe-trotting thing. Usually there's it takes place in a lot of different countries. Bond is going here and there, kind of tracing down leads. I liked that this all took place on mainly Jamaica. There were other parts where it was at other places, you know, London. I think they mentioned New York at one point, but the majority of it takes place on Jamaica, and I kind of like that. I like a more central Bond film. But apparently that was done, apparently that was one of the reasons they chose to do it was because it mainly took place in one central location. That way it would be cheaper to film. So that was why it was picked out over all the other ones. But I actually kind of wouldn't mind seeing Bond go back to that, where, you know, he's just kind of trying to figure out a mystery in one central location. I don't think it's required for Bond to need to go to all of these different places. And I think it gave it a bit more character when you're following, you know, Bond trying to figure out what the hell's going on. So, yeah. Made it easier to follow. Not that, you know, a lot of Bonds are too incredibly complicated to follow, but it made it easier to focus on, you know, the characters because they were all in one place the entire time. And I liked it, and I thought that lent to telling the story a lot better. It was fun seeing Moneypenny. One of my favorite things about, one of my favorite consistencies about the Bond series, and there's a lot of consistencies, that's one of my favorite things about movie series or story series in general, things that are told through multiple films or episodes or whatever. I like consistent references or jokes. One of my favorite things about the Bond movies is the interaction between James and Moneypenny, M's secretary. And it's always, the innuendo and the way they interact is always hilarious to me. I don't know why. They had a lot of it in the Brosnan series, which is the series I grew up on. And it's kind of sad to not see it in the Daniel Craig movies. But to see it in the first one, it was fun to see because I haven't seen that in a while. And their interactions are always hilarious. And I love that shot, very first shot of James walking into the office and tossing the hat and making it. Sean Connery actually did that himself, if I remember correctly, because it was in one take. I don't know how many times they tried that, but it's an awesome shot. It seemed like all of the classic moments that I remember, like, because I said at the beginning of this, I couldn't really remember a whole lot of the stuff that happened in this film. It's funny how many of the classic moments I think back to when I think Bond are in this movie. There's a lot of kind of cool little detective-y things. They show Bond a lot being kind of paranoid, taking precautionary measures to see if anybody's tampered with his room, or even like the scene, I love the scene when he first lands in Jamaica and thinks he's being followed. Well, first off, he finds that there's a driver waiting for him, and then he calls to see if the place actually sent him a driver. They say no, so he knows immediately that this is not right, but he takes the ride anyway, and then confronts the driver about it after they've pulled over, thinking they were being chased. This is kind of complicated, but and then the driver kills himself with a cyanide pill and a cigarette. Like, that stuff, that kind of intrigue, espionage, like, stuff used to drive me crazy when I was a kid, and I loved it. But like stuff like when he's in his hotel room and he powders his like briefcase to see if anybody tried to break into it, or would take a strand of his hair and put it across his closet to see if anybody would go into his closet, and that eventually happens. Something that I thought was kind of funny was he was really paranoid about being killed, because the whole thing is Dr. No wants him killed before he can discover what's going on the island. And after multiple attempts, he comes to his hotel room, sees that his suitcase has been tampered with, the closet has been opened, the strand of hair is gone, and he goes to pour himself a drink, puts a couple ice cubes in a cup, and is about to pour the vodka that he already had out, and stops, doesn't pour the vodka, reaches in the drawer, pulls out another bottle of vodka and pours that and drinks it. It's not like the new bottle could have been tampered with. Somebody could have injected it with something, first off. Second off, I understand it's very clever. You think, oh, this could be drugged. Let me get another one. Even if that second bottle of vodka wasn't drugged. What about the ice cubes? What about the ice cubes? I mean, there was just a exposed thing of ice cubes that he took those ice cubes out of. They could have been pure drug ice cubes. So, the second I saw that, I kind of laughed, because he was being very smart, but not 100% smart, because those ice cubes could have easily been drugged. And that movie would have been very short otherwise. So good thing they weren't, Bond. Good thing they weren't. Dr. No, it seems there's a reason that I didn't really remember him too much, because he's in the movie for like 20 minutes maybe. His presence is kind of sprinkled throughout the film, but he's not really revealed until about, I don't know, 20, 15 minutes before the movie's over, and it's a really abrupt ending. But yeah, his motives aren't that interesting. It's just that, I'm so smart and I got turned down by the governments that I tried to go to, and now I'll make them pay. Basic revenge stuff. But they introduced the idea of Spectre in this film. I can't remember when they start following that up again. I don't know if they mention it in the next one. Yeah, so Spectre has been introduced, and I will be seeing more of that as I continue to watch the Bond films. But yeah, Dr. No was fairly forgettable, and the end was kind of, it was good, but he was overloading like their nuclear reactor. Like, Bond overloaded their nuclear reactor to kind of foil their plans, but wouldn't that have caused a nuclear like meltdown, nuclear meltdown or explosion or something, because like he was overloading or overheating the reactor. Wouldn't that have caused like a nuclear explosion? There was an explosion, but not a nuclear one. And I was kind of thinking there should have been a nuclear one. I don't know a whole lot about nuclear technology, but yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. My thoughts on Dr. No. It had a generally hokey ending. You know, Bond hooking up with the girl. Ursula Andress, super hot in this film. She was actually really good. It's funny because I do totally remember her character in this, because I like that she's a mixture of, she's kind of a badass too. That's the thing, is like generally with most Bond movies, the girls aren't necessarily damsels in distress. She could actually handle herself. And I like the women characters in these movies to be like that. But almost every single time, they always succumb to his charm, and he ends up sleeping with them. That really doesn't happen, and we'll get to that eventually once I see that movie. But yeah, it was kind of a cheesy ending. You know, Bond was being towed back to Jamaica. Felix Leiter, I didn't even mention Felix Leiter. I love Felix Leiter's character throughout the series. I mean, he's played by different actors throughout them, but he's the kind of CIA counterpart to James. They're towing him back to Jamaica, and he just lets the rope off, and they drive off, and him and Ursula Andress presumably have sex in the boat. So, happy ending for all. Yeah, so that was the end of Dr. No. It was good. I think they don't make movies necessarily like this anymore. You know, these kind of lower budget. I don't know back then how much, you know, $1 million or £1 million budget was comparative to now with inflation and everything. But you know, it seemed like a lower budget movie to me, and it didn't really. It was still good. But it's funny. It's really funny to me how different but the same the Bond movies are. Because I feel like the Bond movies now are versions of the old Bond movies, but, you know, kind of grown up with kind of morphed to more modern sensibilities. I think there's a lot more standing around and talking in the original Bond movies, but I think there's still plenty of the same kind of intrigue stories, but with a lot more action thrown in and a lot more stuff to keep people interested, I guess. But you know, I really love Dr. No, and it was actually a really good movie. Plenty of good characters. I think the bad guy was kind of and the plot behind that, but everything else was interesting leading up to that. But I can't put my 100% seal of approval on the ending because it was relatively weak. But still good throughout. So yeah, I can't wait to watch the next Bond movie, which is, I think, From Russia with Love. Let me use my cheat sheet here. Yes, it is From Russia with Love, made in 1963, 1 year later. So I will see you guys next Bond day for Bond month. Bond. Baby 007 doo 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 doo. Dr. No. Ba-na, 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 ba-na.